French horns mixed with 80s inspired synths and earworm melodies that wouldn't leave you alone. Those were the hallmarks of Taylor Swift's fifth studio album, 1989. And its release marked a world-shifting moment in the artist's career as she loudly proclaimed, "Welcome to New York." Gone were the days of the sweet country girl with ringlets in her hair. No, meet Taylor Swift, the pop star diva, waving to you from Manhattan's tallest skyscrapers, debuting a new hairstyle, the now iconic bob with side bang. It was a reintroduction to the world, a pivot that even worried many hardcore Swifties at the start, but it was for naught. This pop Bible, as some call it, was the moment Taylor rewrote the rules, not only for herself, but for pop music as a whole. It's an album that turned skeptics into believers and cemented her status as one of the most influential artists of her generation. Hi, my name is Vera, and with just 1 week remaining until the release of Taylor Swift's 12th studio album, The Life of a Showgirl, I thought that it'd be nice to combine my love for literature and Taylor Swift's art and recommend you some books based on each album to help you with the wait and anticipation over these next couple of days. Today we are continuing the countdown with 1989. For these recommendations, I really tried to dig deep and extract themes and motifs that I thought made the albums resonate so deeply and to tailor my recommendations based on that. Let's do some scene setting first, shall we? So by the time 1989 was released in 2014, Taylor Swift's personal life had become a tabloid spectacle. There were endless headlines about her dating life and breakups everywhere. It was so bad that she was even titled a serial dater, trading boys week to week but never being able to actually keep one, or alternatively, someone who just used her relationships for song material, and for this, she was endlessly mocked. In the prologue to the Taylor's version, she writes, "You see, in the years preceding this, I had become the target of slut-shaming, the intensity and restlessness of which would be criticized and called out if it happened today, the jokes about my amount of boyfriends. The trivialization of my songwriting as if it were a predatory act of a boy-crazy psychopath, the media co-signing of this narrative. I had to make it stop because it was starting to really hurt." This album, in a sense, was a public response, not through press conferences or interviews, but through art. The best way she's always communicated with us, her songs and her performance. But instead of being offended by all of this, she leaned into it. She said, okay, what if I was a man-eating crazy ex-girlfriend, the character that the media portrays me as? Well, that's how the hit Blank Space was born, with the music video elevating that message in a very satirical way. Taylor is seen living in this mansion like a villain, breaking the hood of a car, cutting up his shirt, and stabbing a cake that splurts blood. It's incredible. And by performing this role of herself, by showing how self-aware she is, she reclaims the narrative. She shows that she can weaponize her image rather than run from it. And in a sense, this album is kind of like a meta commentary on this. It isn't just about love and heartbreak, it's about performance and identity in the public eye. By embracing the role of Taylor Swift, the persona, she creates a space for Taylor Swift, the person, to remain private. It's a really clever form of self-preservation because the world can obsess over the version of her that she's built for them while she stays a step ahead. At least for a while, as we know now retrospectively. A nonfiction book that I think would help us build out an understanding of how the public perceives you, the role that the internet plays in that, and the first instances of public cancellations around this time period is So You've Been Publicly Shamed by Jon Ronson. Although this might be slightly outdated by now, I still think it's a very good time capsule. And I've been actually meaning to reread this book just to see how it holds up today. It basically follows the author, Jon Ronson, as he travels around interviewing real people who have been at the center of viral outrage, whose lives were completely changed and often destroyed because of a single post. And he looks at several case studies, like a PR executive who tweeted a thoughtless joke before boarding a flight, and by the time she landed, she was the #1 trending topic worldwide and had lost her job. Or, for example, a journalist whose quote was taken out of context, leading to a massive backlash that ruined her career. And I mean, how often do we hear stories like that still today? But the book doesn't stay at that superficial level. It also goes deeper into those bigger systems that facilitate this sort of behavior to occur. For example, how Twitter and other platforms reward outrage, making shaming spread faster, or how companies and institutions in general react when someone goes viral for the wrong reasons. It also talks about the psychology of mobs, why ordinary people get caught up in destroying someone online, and also ties it all back with more historical examples, showing that really this sort of herd behavior has occurred throughout history and is just now seeing a new digitalized form. By the end, you get a very interesting time capsule understanding of what this culture and what the digital age looked like around the same time that 1989 was released. And it is just a very thought-provoking book, and I highly, highly recommend it if this forward-facing media, public-facing aspect of 1989 appeals to you. Another way that Taylor Swift was rejecting the media stories about her during the 1989 era was by rejecting this idea that she is a girl that needs a man. She was a girl boss living in the big city. She needs no man. That's obviously ignoring the fact that a couple months in, she started dating Calvin Harris, but that was kept on the low. I'll get to that in a second. And instead, she cultivated a very tight-knit group of friends that became colloquially called Taylor's Girl Squad. And they included people like Selena Gomez, Karlie Kloss, Gigi Hadid, Cara Delevingne, a lot of people who fell in and out, notably Zendaya, Hailey Steinfeld. But it wasn't just a group of friends, it became part of her brand, because remember, before she was the boy-obsessed girl, so now she wanted to promote with female empowerment after her feminist awakening, though it was a quite superficial understanding of feminism, I think. But this branding of the girl squad and girl power went so deep that the Bad Blood music video showcased a bunch of these friendships. In doing so, it doubles as a visual mission statement because it shows all these powerful women becoming an army and fighting a Selena Gomez that looks quite familiar. She's basically cosplaying Katy Perry, okay? Even though the point of this video was very much to show female solidarity and strength, it is quite ironic that it is essentially Taylor and her besties taking down Katy Perry indirectly. It's like, you have to, all women must support all women. Unless you're Katy Perry, then I'm gonna create an army to destroy you. It is kind of funny to look back on this now. And remember, as I mentioned, this entire time that she was propping up like, I don't need no man, all I need are my girls. She was actually dating Calvin Harris, though you would not be at fault for not remembering that, because Taylor kind of hid it herself. In the Miss Americana documentary, there's a hilarious moment, if you're in the know, when she talks about winning the album of the year for 1989 and not having like a partner to go home and celebrate with. She was very focused on highlighting that there will be people that say that your accomplishments are actually theirs. They try to undercut you, but no, I am a solo force. I am independent of any man's influence, validation, what have you. This is my achievement. So I guess she was trying to fuel that narrative. And there was one more piece of this puzzle. She kept highlighting this message, whether it was at the end of shows or it being the secret message in Clean, framing the Out of the Woods music video, and it was this idea that she lost him but found herself, and somehow that was everything. And a book that plays around with that idea as well of having a character who's like, I don't need no man, but actually then finding one anyway, is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I had to recommend this. I mean, the main character also has a blonde bob. It has to happen. We follow Nora Stevens, who is a literary agent living in New York City. Welcome to New York. Thank you very much. And she's the kind of woman who self-describes herself as the other woman in rom-coms, the big city girlfriend who's left behind when the hero falls for sweet small town girl. As a literary agent, Nora is very aware of this trope, knows it well, but she doesn't care. She's focused on her career and taking care of her younger sister, Libby. However, then Libby convinces Nora to take her on a sister trip to a small town called Sunshine Falls, North Carolina. Yes, they are both aware of how insane that is as a name for a place. But Libby just wants to take her out for one last summer adventure before her family changes. And who knows? Maybe Nora could have her own small town romance after critiquing them for so long. Unfortunately, when she arrives in Sunshine Falls, she runs into Charlie Lastra, a grumpy editor from back in New York, someone who, ever since they first met, has been quite a thorn in her side. And somehow, their paths keep crossing. The story goes on from there, but one thing that I'd like to highlight here as well is, just like in 1989, there is a big focus on female friendships. Especially the highlight for me in this book, just overall, even more so than the romance, was Nora and Libby's relationship. Nora has always been the protector, the elder sister, the one who sacrifices for her sister. But over the summer, she must really face what it means to let Libby finally make her own choices and figure out what she wants for her own life. And those were things that I really related to. I'm also an older sister, so yeah, this was a really big standout for me. So if the women supporting women sort of aspect of 1989 and its lore appeals to you more, that's definitely found here, and in a very profound way, I'd say. So there is a topic that we have been circling around, but haven't really stated it openly, if you will. There were a lot of pressures and constraints that Taylor found herself around this time, whether it was her label not being very happy that she wants to move away from the country sound. Famously, Scott Borchetta tried to pressure her into having even just one country-esque song on 1989, which today sounds like bizarre. Can you imagine her on her little banjo? No. Sandwiched between blank space and style, or style out of the woods? No, you can't. Like, that's ridiculous. That is something that they were pushing for. There were pressures when it came to her looks. People really hammering in on her body, what it looked like. There were people, she was dating Harry Styles, and there were people quite jealous of that and not very happy with that relationship and critiquing that a lot. And so her having this very intense visual pivot was her in some way trying to rebrand herself, right? Reinvent herself, but totally. And this leads me to believe that a central question of 1989 is, how do you break free of the roles imposed on you and create yourself on your own terms? She openly sings about the pressures that she feels on herself in I Know Places, where she describes her and her lover standing out in plain sight and the fact that they are just there, that he is holding her. That is a scene. She describes this as feeling as vultures are circling around her. But in the chorus, she sings, I know places we won't be found, and they'll be chasing their tails trying to track us down, because I know places we can hide. But it is very sad that she feels that she had to hide, especially at these new heights of her fame where she should have really been very happy. The final song on the standard edition of the album is Clean, and although it is an incredible song, I go back to it so much. It's so cathartic for me to listen to. It does feel like a forced resolution, especially since we know what happened after 1989. The structure of the song essentially is that in the verses, she describes all these awful things through different metaphors, but at the end of the chorus, she comes to the conclusion, by morning, gone was any trace of you. I think I am finally clean. But like I said, was that true? Probably not. I think New Romantics, which is the conclusion to the deluxe version of the album, is a much more truthful mission statement for the album and a better resolution, or a more truthful one anyway. It is kind of like a modernization of the traditional notion of romanticism, which really celebrated intense emotion, rebellion, finding beauty in fleeting, passionate experiences. And it was a art and literary movement in the early 19th century. In New Romantic, Taylor updates this for the modern and urban setting. Instead of poets wandering in nature, it's young people wandering cities and nightlife, chasing highs and heartbreak. In fact, she declares heartbreak being the national anthem. But it's not melancholic. She celebrates living boldly in this chaos, dancing through pain. She says, I could build a castle out of all the bricks they threw at me, and every day is like a battle, and every night with us is like a dream. She turns mistakes into stories, much like the Romantic poets who turned suffering into art. But not everyone living in New York always had this response to how do you break free of the rules imposed on you and create yourself on your own terms. I think a book that explores this in a much more cynical and melancholic sense, at least more obviously cynical and melancholic, because you could argue that there is a lot of hidden melancholy on 1989, is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. We follow a young woman called Esther Greenwood in the 1950s who seems to have everything going for her. She's smart, ambitious, and she just won a prestigious internship at a magazine in New York City. However, even though on the surface she's living a very glamorous life that many girls dream of, underneath she feels deeply alienated and trapped by this life that she is living. She doesn't really seem to connect to the world the way that others do, or the expectations placed on her as a young woman. Society keeps telling her that she has to choose between the traditional domestic life and a career, and yet neither option feels really right. And ultimately, these pressures build until she begins to spiral into a depression. So she feels like she's suffocating. This is symbolized by the image of the bell jar, like being trapped under a glass, unable to breathe, but unable to escape. This book talks a lot about societal pressures on women and the limited choices that they were given, especially in the 1950s, and what it feels like to be stuck between you, who you really are, and who the world wants you to be. I think that this is a book that will resonate with a lot of people that enjoyed 1989 because it really sees Taylor stuck in that same spot. It's been a classic for such a long time for so many reasons, and if I can motivate you to read it, even though it wasn't personally my favorite, it is written as stream of consciousness, and that's not really a writing style that personally works for me, but I really do appreciate this book, especially since even though it is quite sad, or not even sad, even though it is quite heavy, it's also incredibly vivid and like very funny because Esther's voice is very sharp and witty. So yeah, if this speaks to you, please do check out The Bell Jar. Now, as many of you probably know, with the release of 1989, Taylor was at the heights of fame. She was everywhere. It was leading to overexposure. Even she noticed that she was this close to being exposed, as she says in an infamous phone call. What was leading to this? Well, there were constant new paparazzi photos of her, leaving her New York City apartment, walking with the girl squad, and when the internet gets saturated with something, even if they love it at the start, if it's too much, they tear it down. There was the aforementioned Girl Squad, which was being criticized as exclusive, cliquey, very performative, and it turned the idea of squad goals from being aspirational to more so ironic. Despite her trying to obscure her relationships on this album, there were still a lot of speculations about songs, especially being about Harry Styles, specifically Style and Out of the Woods. That was not a relationship that was very looked happily upon. Then there was the awards show situation. The people really didn't like the speech at the Grammys, given the recent fallout #2 with Kanye West. People also started mocking her surprise phase whenever she won, and it's something that continues to this day. The 1989 World Tour had a lot of celebrity guest moments, but it was the randomest people, and a lot of people just thought that it was a PR stunt rather than genuine fun. There was a meme saying like, oh, and tonight we welcome to the 1989 tour stage, and it was the randomest person that you can think of. People got really tired of it. There were even viral internet jokes joking about her collecting famous friends like Pokemon. At the end of the day, people stopped believing in her. They thought she was too calculated, too much PR, and not authentic like she used to be, like a sellout. At the end of the day, it really felt like we were at a breaking point. All these things that she was really struggling to balance with made it feel like she was hurtling to an inevitable end. And we do know that that did eventually happen at the end of the 1989 era with an edited phone call by Kim Kardashian and Kanye West. You could say that the center could not hold. So what is another book that really deals with a moment in time where there were a lot of pressures, difficulty to balance them, this idea that the center cannot hold? Well, just like 1989 captures the glittering ambition and crushing overexposure of New York's Taylor Swift at her peak, Joan Didion's Slouching Towards Bethlehem explores the same city through a sharper and more fragmented lens, also tying into California, showing how the relentless grind and performance of urban life can erode identity and push people and a culture to a breaking point. It opens also with a Yeats poem, which I really recommend, and I think that it honestly serves as a intro to 1989 as well. Slouching Towards Bethlehem is a collection of essays Joan Didion wrote throughout the 1960s, capturing what it felt like to live through such a turbulent era. All these essays come to form a very kaleidoscopic image of a world in transition. The most famous essay, which is also the titular one, is about San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district during the Summer of Love, 1967. Didion immerses herself in the hippie counterculture, communes, drug use, and runaway kids. But instead of idealizing it like so many did, she shows the chaos and emptiness behind the peace and love facade. There's this haunting sense of society being on the brink of just falling apart, a loss of order and a loss of meaning, which she ties to the Yeats poem, The Second Coming, almost making it seem like at this point this unraveling is about to happen. It's inevitable. The beast has risen and it's coming for us. There is a difference though between the California and the New York essays. In California, she talks about Hollywood and celebrity culture, the small towns and deserts, showing the strange myths and harsh realities of the West. There's a lot of sensationalism around crime stories, and she really likes this juxtaposition of the beautiful landscapes and the danger beneath them. The New York essays, though, which come later in the book, are more tailored toward her experience herself as she moves to New York in her early 20s, full of ambition and naivety. Kind of like Esther from The Bell Jar, kind of like Taylor Swift. She captures what it's like to be young and unmoored in the city, without having much money, still being anonymous, and yet chasing meaning and identity. The big essay about New York, which is very personal and reflective, is the essay Goodbye to All That. It's about falling in love with New York when you first arrive. Welcome to New York, it's been waiting for you, as Taylor says. Then over time, realizing that actually it's a city that can really wear you down until leaving becomes an act of survival. It captures the bittersweetness of the place, which is something that I think Taylor could relate to at the time. Together, the California and New York essays create a push and pull, with Didion moving between the two worlds, observing how a place influences people and culture. By the end, the collection feels like a map of America in the 1960s. The West Coast symbolizing dreams dissolving into anarchy and disillusionment, and the East Coast symbolizing the ambition and reinvention, but also loneliness and burnout that is associated with having to do that over and over. It's really about the cities, the people that pass through them, and how they are shaped by them. And with New York playing such a big part, I think, in the identity of 1989 and being a very good mirror to this hustle and bustle and inevitability feeling of the dominoes that are out of your control just falling one by one into place until a breaking point, I just think that there is definitely a thread that connects the album and this book. All right, so those were my 1989 recommendations. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with your other Swiftie friends so that the right people can find and make use of these videos, this video series. But anyway, that's all from me, and I'll see you tomorrow for my Reputation recommendations. Bye-bye!